So let's talk about the enterprise sales playbook.
In enterprise, in my experience, it comes down to, can they handle that complexity, and do they have what I call the 4 H's? So do they exhibit hunger, hustle, humility, and heart? I think that A reps are the ones who have just a tremendous amount of grit, and they're never satisfied. They're always looking for ways to improve. As a rule, though, I will say that every subsequent hire should be raising the bar for the entire team. I think that there are 4 fundamentals that I think are critical in sales. Number 1.
Today, I'm bringing to you Mark Goldberger. He is the guy when it comes to building an enterprise sales motion. Because you see, he has kind of built it from the ground up back at TripActions. He actually started as the first and only enterprise AE. So he closed the first deals, built a playbook while doing it, and then he quickly moved into leading a team and then a global team of enterprise sellers. Then in 2022, Mark joined Ramp. And guys, they are absolutely crushing it. Quarter after quarter, they are beating records. And just after being 1 quarter in, Mark's team was achieving 385% to quota. Just to say, Mark knows what he's talking about. So today, we are also talking about how to build an enterprise sales motion, what it takes to kill it in enterprise sales, and obviously, Mark's playbook to enterprise sales. If you're ready to make the move into enterprise sales, please enjoy from my conversation with Mark. Can we kickstart this conversation by sharing your experience at, as well as TripActions and maybe at Ramp, where you actually saw the opportunity to move up market and to sell to those enterprise clients? Because when is it actually really time to consider even doing that step?
When is it time to move up market? I think you start to get signals from the market. So the number of inbound requests increase. There's a buzz about with people who are whoever your stakeholder is that's buying from your particular product. Oh, there's this interest. Maybe it's not right for us just yet, but we want to learn more about it, right? So there's this intrigue. That's an external thing that you'll see. You'll also see maybe competitors either faltering or being successful. That can be a signal. You'll notice that the deals that you're closing as a company are continuing to get bigger, continuing to get more complex. If you're starting with a PLG motion and then you're sprinkling in sales on top, and that might cover you for SMB and mid-market, you have this strong signal from the market that you have product market fit there, you want to keep experimenting because likely, depending on the product you're selling, the TAM can only be attained if you're able to tap into the largest, most global, complex organizations on the planet today, and those are enterprises. And what I'm telling you is you shouldn't go after the hairiest of them all, but you should figure out where does your ideal customer profile overlap with that enterprise segment, and find those early adopters, those people who want to be on the cutting edge, who want to be looking about ways that they can improve their businesses. And when you find those matches, you can find what I call product customer fit. And that's really the first stage in building an enterprise business, is finding those early customers who can build with you and who want to.
Is there a line that you can draw between the SMB mid-market that you initially are selling to with the enterprise segment, meaning that you talk about product customer fit? Are you looking then at the same verticals, same type of companies, but just bigger? Or is it really just looking for a completely total new type of customer where you can find a product market fit with?
That's a great question. I think in my experience, it comes down to where you've been successful before, but let's push against that red line. So maybe they're just larger. Maybe they operate in a different geography. Maybe they have an additional use case or need, right? So you want to gradually be expanding from that initial market that you've tapped into where you have fit. If you have too much that's different or unique for these new customers and this new segment that you're going after, so it's not just bigger companies, but they're also more global and they're also in different verticals and they also have different use cases and so on and so forth, the more of those situations you have, the less likely you're going to find that fit.
That would make sense. And I also liked how you mentioned that in 20 Minutes VC podcast, where you said you don't care too much about revenue at the beginning. Can you explain why that's the case?
Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to revenue, you obviously need to be earning revenue. You need to keep the lights on, and revenue, I would say, especially in the economic environment we're in today, is really critical. But when you're first setting out, you need to be able to learn from your customers. You need to be able to figure out what that fit is. You need to be able to leverage those logos and that name brand and those customer references to continue to grow. This is a foundational layer we're talking about. And so, realistically, the hope is that you have enough capital on hand that you can close the first handful of customers where the product is either free or deeply discounted, or there's some benefit for them to taking that leap of faith and buying your product. Once you have that partner established and they've seen success, then you can start to develop that rinse and repeat motion, right? You can start to scale atop that. But when you're looking for the earliest of product customer fit, it's really about finding those people and those companies that are willing to take a chance on you. And in those cases, revenue is not the most important thing. The most important thing is finding a partner.
That's interesting. So really focus on the logos, make sure that you have those references, and that can be even at the cost of discounting to a certain extent.
Absolutely. And I'm not a big advocate of discounting in general, but I will say that if you're putting together a NASCAR slide, right, a slide in your deck that's validating your product, your platform, your people, all of that, and the logos there are not logos that people in enterprises would recognize or see as peer companies, it's very, very hard to win those deals. And so the more that you can have those logos there that are recognizable, to have those partners that do sing your praises, that's really, really critical at that foundational layer.
Yeah, I like that thinking. Also, in some way, yes, you are maybe offering a discount to get that initial customer that's willing to put their business at risk somehow because they don't know you, they don't trust you, they don't have any other references yet. But if you have that logo, and yes, you provide a discount for that value that you get in exchange by just making it so much easier to win future customers pays off the discount. I guess that's kind of the thinking behind it.
That's exactly right. As you become more established, as your product is more established and does more things and checks more boxes, the level of discounting that you need to provide goes down considerably. To the point where when you have product market fit and there's almost a pull motion as opposed to a push motion, that allows you to actually raise prices. It allows you to add more features and functionality and go after more segments, to go after more verticals, right? So you always want to be expanding your penetration of the TAM, but where you have the fit, of course you don't really need to discount. Where you don't, you do need to make sure that exchange is a fair one between both parties.
Hi guys, just wanted to invite you to block May 16, 2024 in your agenda for the We Are Sales conference. The number one reason why people didn't join last year is simply because they hadn't blocked the date. So I hope that by so doing, you can block it. Hope to see you there on May 16, 2024. All right, let's go back. So let's talk about the enterprise sales playbook. I know it's about 80% of the real work. You still have 20% that needs to be adaptable, and you need to still, let enough room for the art part of sales. But let's talk about the playbook, because I know in the preparation you mentioned four different elements. I don't know. Do you still know what 4 elements this might be?
I think that there are 4 fundamentals that I think are critical in sales. Number 1, it's pipeline generation. If you have more than 5x pipeline coverage, as an example, you could be a terrible salesperson and you will still crush your quota. If you have 1.5x pipeline coverage, you could be the best salesperson on earth, but you're probably not going to be hitting that quota. So pipeline generation, absolutely most important thing. You have to be able to qualify. We can talk more about that. There are various qualification methodologies. At the end of the day, you need to be able to qualify deals in and out. You need to build a champion. It's just an absolute critical element if you're going to be selling in a non-PLG motion. Champion building is critically important, and you need to get to the economic buyer. And if you do those 4 things, you control your destiny.
And to your experience, what seemed to be the most challenging for the average rep?
It really can vary across different reps. I think that there is a little bit of laziness with a lot of account executives today from a pipeline generation standpoint. They have BDRs, they have SDRs, they're depending on inbound. 2021 was certainly a feast period when it came to SaaS companies. And so it was almost too easy for them. And sales is hard, right? You have to be able to put in the work. You have to hustle. You have to have that hunger. So pipeline generation, where you're getting rejected more than 90% of the time, that's a hard thing to do. And so it's very easy to say, hey, I'm not going to focus on pipeline generation. I'm just going to focus on the opportunities that I have here, and I'm going to be successful because I'm going to close all of these opportunities that are on my plate. The reality is that the more pipeline you have, the fewer unnatural things you need to do. If you have a ton of pipeline, you don't have to discount. You don't have to promise features that the product team will now need to build. You don't need to do a lot of those things because you have more than enough pipeline to go around and to absolutely obliterate your quota. So pipeline generation is actually the most important thing. It's also the hardest.
Is there such a thing as too much pipeline then?
It's very rare. There was a time when I was the lone enterprise rep at my former company, and I had something like 86 opportunities in my name, and that was too much. That was too many when it comes to enterprise with the complexity of the deals that would be there. And that just said, hey, we need to expand the team. We have too much opportunity. We have too much pipeline. So it's actually a virtuous signal to say, hey, you need to hire more because you can close more deals that way. But as a rep, if you have a ton of pipeline, you should always be doing a prioritization exercise in your head or on paper. And that is, let me sort this top 20% of my deals, bottom 80% of my deals. And we know from the 80-20 rule that 80% of their closed won is going to come from that 20%. So if they focus the majority of their time on that top 20%, they're going to be very, very successful.
That's interesting, actually, because I understand that if you do, the pipeline review, you don't want to have like 80 plus opportunities in the pipeline. It's not realistic that you can close all of them all by yourself. But I can imagine that it is good practice to have 80, 100 opportunities in mind, and then where you apply that 80-20 rule, where you just keep 20% of the opportunities that you rank based on prioritization.
That's right. And you have to leave room for opportunities to move up the prioritization list as well as move down. Sometimes, for whatever reason, companies end up getting focused on other priorities. And so an opportunity you might have been depending on that was in your top 20% moves down to the bottom 80%. And other opportunities that were in the bottom 80% warm up. There are examples that I've seen where certain external circumstances can happen. CFOs get fired or retire or literally had an opportunity recently where a champion, it was a really, really sad thing. He was off to a conference and visiting his daughter and passed away. If you're depending on a champion and you're relatively single threaded and any of these situations happen, you're in trouble. And this is why you want to make sure you have more than enough pipeline, number one. And number two, you leave that 20% for adaptation, for innovation, for being able to have that kind of flexibility that's required.
Right. And also, I think that the more pipeline you have, just the more stricter you have to be with the qualification that you apply. Because I know that you're familiar with MEDDIC. Related to that, I wanted to ask you, because I can assume also that the A-reps, they don't only apply MEDDIC if they do apply MEDDIC in the first place. I assume that they go even deeper. They capture and process signals that goes even further than what MEDDIC can provide to us. So I don't know if you agree with that, but also what have your experience been relating to qualification and really observing what A-reps are doing?
I think that A-reps are the ones who have just a tremendous amount of grit, and they're never satisfied. They're always looking for ways to improve. And when you have that mentality, you're able to exceed what others are doing because you just have this motor. And MEDDIC, I think, is often used the wrong way, or at least the way that I learned to use MEDDIC or MEDPIC, in fact, because I do think paper process, especially in enterprise, is important. The way that I utilize it is it's an activity. It's not just an acronym that's in Salesforce that you should be filling out. That's not really a value add activity. It's an exercise between the sales leader and the rep and maybe someone else in the organization. And what we find out through this act of discovery, of learning about this opportunity, what the rep feels is going well, the challenges, the questions, what we understand then is it becomes a map. And it's a map of what is the information we have, what is the information we don't have, what are the risks in the deal, how can we see around corners, what are the action items that we need to take in order to de-risk this opportunity. And so MEDDIC or MEDPIC is an activity that can and should be done in an enterprise deal potentially multiple times, because the answers are going to change over the 6 to 12 months that you might be working on that opportunity.
Hi guys, I quickly want to let you know that we are doubling down on this podcast, and by so doing, we are looking for the better revenue stories out there. So if you like what you hear, please give it a like or a follow. It is a simple click on a button, but that click would mean the world to us. All right, let's go back. But that is also the source of the prioritization, wouldn't you say?
It is, but at the same time, reps are very focused in the world in which they're in. I think we all are. And so you might have blind spots. Again, I think everyone does have blind spots. By having this be a group activity as opposed to just an acronym in Salesforce that we're filling in details on, we're able to pressure test, we're able to see around corners in ways that one person on her own or his own isn't necessarily able to. And that's why a good sales leader is going to be able to get into the deal and understand the mechanics of it. What are the tactics? What are the strategies that need to be employed to get to that next level? And I, as a sales leader, can tell you what that is based on, again, hundreds of deals and scar tissue and pattern recognition. But that's not a big value add for a rep. The value add is asking the questions and getting them to come to that realization on their own, right? It's like, give a fish to a hungry person and satisfy their hunger, but teach them to fish and they'll never go hungry again. And so that's really how I look at being a sales leader, is how can I help to coach my team to always be better, to continue to push and be the best that they can potentially be.
I like that. And I'm also curious what you think of the following, because we had also I'm not going to say recently, it has been some time now, but Christopher Eggman on the podcast, and he was talking about mega deals. So basically also enterprise sales, but let's say the highest of the highest valued ones. And he said that mega dealers always work with a T-shaped sales funnel, T-shaped sales pipeline, if you will, where you indeed have like a massive amount of pipeline, but it's so hard to get through. It's so easy to get a no. It's so hard to get a yes, I will focus on that one. And so I don't know what your experience has been related to that, but how good do you see A-reps really having that strict focus on only those accounts, only those opportunities that are really worth the time and effort?
I think you need to have balance as best as you can achieve it, which is to say, if you are only pursuing whales, you have a high amount of risk in your pipeline because these deals can take an exceptionally long time. There are an abundance of risks that can come out that you can't control for all of them. And so if you are strictly focused on the whales, you may feast, but you may starve to death as well. And so I think the way that I would say at least is safer for an organization is to have, you have those A reps and they've got 2, 3, 4 opportunities that are really sizable that they're going after. But they also need to be going after that run rate business. And because if they're not, they might be spending 12, 18, 24 months on opportunities that may end up not coming in. And if those opportunities don't come in, they will have spent that 12 to 18 to 24 months not producing revenue for the company. And so that's just a situation that's bad for the company. It's bad for the rep. They'll likely end up leaving the company at that point. And you will have wasted and really squandered a tremendous opportunity for that rep to be successful in your organization.
No, that's definitely a good remark. Let's talk about the champion. How do you actually know if you have a true champion to start with?
It's a good question. It's one that I ask in interviews often. So if anyone who I interview is listening, write this one down. No, truly, there's only one way to know if you have a champion. You have to test them. And there's only one test for a champion. And the test for a champion is asking them to take you to the economic buyer. A champion has to have power and influence in the organization. And so if they say they can't take you to the economic buyer, they either lack that power or influence, or you haven't earned the right yet for them to take you there. And so you need to understand, are you dealing with a coach, someone who just doesn't have the juice to get you to where you want to go? They can still be valuable. They can still share insights with you. They can validate that your product meets certain requirements, but they're never going to be able to take you to the economic buyer. And the only way that you can control your opportunity is getting to that economic buyer and being in a room with the EB and knowing for a fact, what the EB cares about. You don't want someone who's just selling on your behalf behind the scenes as a champion might, because they might not have all of the answers like you do. You really need to be able to get to the economic buyer. And so that is the true test of a champion. It's the only way that you know for sure if you have a champion or not.
That's interesting, because also on our latest conference, we had a panel discussion with C-level people. So we had a CMO, CHRO, CDO, and the CHRO specifically said that I don't always want to be in those meetings. I have a team. I trust them. They have their responsibility. And if they say that we should go with certain project, then I don't need to be in that meeting to reconfirm this. So have you had those situations also? Or do you say, look, I don't work unless I really see the final decision maker?
Of course, it happens all the time. And as you move into larger and larger, more complex organizations like enterprises, it happens with even more frequency. The reality is, if you are solving a significant pain for that organization and the ROI is going to be massive for them, then there's a reason why they should want to meet with you. If this is a project that is important to them, that's going to help them in the organization, they should want to meet with you. And it doesn't have to be you as a salesperson who's alone in a room with, the executive team. It should be your CRO or head of sales or your CEO or other leaders from your side as well that are in the room, and making sure that, hey, if you're going to choose us, this is a partnership. This is not just a vendor-customer relationship where it's great that you trust your employees to make this decision, and you should, but we want to make sure that our companies are aligned, that your vision is filtered down through your team to the point where we're able to help support that vision for you. Our success is your success, and vice versa. And so if we set out from the beginning that is the expectation, then there's no reason why they shouldn't want to meet with us. We're not saying they have to meet for hours. 15, 30 minutes is fine. It's really about aligning that shared vision.
You said a couple of things that piqued my interest, because you said it's about expectation. So I assume that's also something that you make clear from the very beginning when you have those initial conversations, that eventually you want to have this conversation C-level to C-level, and all the speak persons in between as well. And then the second part is that you mentioned that it's also about from the selling organization, having the CRO, the VP of sales being involved in those negotiations, I think is also particularly interesting. It's not only the sales rep, the enterprise AE that goes and take the full thing under control, right?
That's exactly right. And a recent example at Ramp, working with a really large global organization, when you're selling those large enterprise deals that are impactful for you and impactful for the customer, it's not single stakeholder to single stakeholder. Recent deal that took place, I think there were probably about 15 or 20 stakeholders on our side, and probably as many on their side. And so when you're aligning that many people, when you're aligning those different beliefs, those different views, et cetera, you want to make sure that it's aligned at every level, right? Not just lower levels and mid levels, but at senior executive levels as well. You have to set that expectation from the start, and if you do so, then it's very easy to remind everyone when the time comes to get into that room with the economic buyer that this is something that we agreed to from the start.
I love that. Really creating that sense of partnership. But
that's exactly right.
What if I assume you have had that at multiple locations, that that's the expectation that has been set, maybe by you or by one of your teammates. But then when times comes, like the champion doesn't want to present you to the EB or have that meeting set up with the EB. So then what do you do?
Well, you can say a couple things. One, you need to question at that point, do you have a champion? Does this person actually have the power and influence to get you in a room with the economic buyer? If they don't, again, you might not have a champion there. They also could be a lower level champion that needs to get you to a more senior champion who gets you in the room. But you do need to be able to get in that room. Otherwise, look, can you win a deal without getting to the economic buyer? Absolutely. But it's a very risky way to live, right? And so if you want to control your own destiny, you need to be in that room. If you're willing to flip a coin and that can be the decision of winning or losing a deal, then maybe you don't need to be in that room. I'm not going to sit here and say, I've never won a deal where I didn't get in that room. It has happened, but it's a very risky way to live.
Right. No, I think that would make sense. Enterprise sales, I think it's, it also goes with long sales cycles, many touch points. So how do you then integrate marketing or have like a good collaboration between marketing and sales altogether? Like, what are your best practices when it comes to that?
It's such a critical relationship, and it's just really, really important to be aligned with marketing in a few ways. So one, from generating lead standpoint, right? Are we messaging correctly externally? Are we in the right trade publications or advertisements? How are they resonating with different segments, right? So you need to be aligned there, but you also need to be aligned really as a sales team with product, and product marketing is really that bridge between the two areas to make sure that there's a feedback loop between product and sales that's really healthy, so that product is focused on building what sales needs in order to close opportunities, and sales has a view to product and why we're building what we're building and how we need to position it. And so marketing really is that bridge, that's that connective tissue that's allowing everything to function properly.
That's interesting. And how do you organize that in the team? Is it just about having enough touch points, or do you also try to incorporate them with prospect calls, or how do you try to make this very pragmatic?
I think it depends on the organization, but ultimately, there need to be several points of connection. So again, at different levels within the organization, I would say product marketing should be meeting regularly with the sales team to share certainly about the roadmap, what's coming from product, how to position it, what we should be talking about. They also should be in the room with you periodically, and that's whether, even if you have Gong or Chorus, where they can listen to calls, that's helpful. But when they can actually get in the room and ask questions with prospects that are potentially safer for you, that's really helpful as well. They need to understand by going out there and speaking to prospects and customers directly what resonates and what doesn't.
I love that. I love that thinking. Let's maybe talk about the enterprise seller, because I'm also just wondering, how do you differ if someone is better for the SMB mid-market, or is it better for the enterprise sales motion?
It's a hard question. It's one I ask myself all the time. I think that you, in enterprise, want someone who has some experience working on larger, more complex deals. It's hard though if you're hiring someone who's never been in enterprise, right? That's a risk that you're taking on. And so how do you test them to understand, do they have the capacity for this? In other segments, have they closed deals that are more complex, that push up against that red line? I think in enterprise, in my experience, it comes down to, can they handle that complexity, and do they have what I call the 4 H's? And they're the intangibles that I find are really critical elements at every level for salespeople to be effective. So do they exhibit hunger, hustle, humility, and heart? And if they have those 4 traits, usually they're going to be able to figure it out and find a way to be successful.
Interesting. Can you explain what those 4 H's are then?
Yeah. So hunger, as you can imagine, I mean, you want someone who wants that win more than anyone. They've got that burning desire to succeed, that deep need to win. They're just incredibly competitive and hungry for that success. Right? You have to have that. You can find people who are later in their career, they might not be as hungry, right? They've had some successes. Now they're looking for, something that's a little more cushy or laid back. But if you have that hunger, you're going to outwork the competition. And that's the second H. It's hustle, right? You have to be willing to outwork everyone. Not just on your own team, but certainly outworking everyone on the competition. The last thing that you want as a sales leader is your competition to be outworking you. There's no excuse for that, right? If you get to the gym before everyone else and you leave after everyone else, that says something. If you're the last one to arrive and the first one to leave, that also says something. So you have to have that hustle. Humility. It's very easy in sales to find people who are boastful, who believe that they're the most successful, and they have nothing else to learn or do or grow. And the reality is that no matter how successful we are, someone's always done more. There's always areas to improve. None of us are perfect. If you think about baseball, the best players fail 60 to 70% of the time, right? So we're always looking for ways to improve, and we have to be able to recognize that. We have to embrace that. We have to allow that to fuel our growth. There's a great quote from John McMahon, which is, the difference between winners and losers is that losers practice until they get it right. Winners practice until they never get it wrong, right? So you need to have that hustle. You need to have that humility. And then the last is heart. And I remember speaking to Doc Rivers, the basketball coach, a few years ago, and we were talking about talent density, and we were talking about, he can't teach talent, right? People either have it or they don't. But just as important is that heart. And so you can have the most talented players. They're not always the ones who win every championship. You have to have the heart element as well. Something that it should be table stakes, but it's often not. And I equate heart in sales to really having an alignment with what the company cares about. Are they doing things for the right reasons, right? Do they care about their teammates? Do they care about doing things the right way? They're not cutting corners. Again, this is table stakes, but there are people out there who don't have all four of these H's. And so when you're a hiring manager, you need to be able to test for these, and you need to make sure that you're hiring people who have this incredible upside because they have the right intangibles.
I love that. I definitely love that. And I can also imagine that for people that you would promote internally to start in enterprise sales, you could say, I know if they have the H's or not. And so I think my question is now twofold. Like, if you start like an enterprise sales motion inside a company, would you say that you first look internally to see, because people understand the prospect, they understand the product, they know where the company is going. You also know yourself if you have the 4 H's or not. So should you start there? And if yes, if no, eventually you might actually look also externally. How do you dare actually look if they have those 4 H's?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it depends on the organization. And I know that might be a cop-out of an answer, but it really is true. You can have people who have been very successful in SMB or mid-market when they try to move into enterprise, fail. I've seen it in my career. There are other people who can make that transition, but it's a little bit rarer. When you think about enterprise, the sales motion, almost every element of sales in enterprise is 180-degree opposite from what you do in transactional sales. And so to have someone be able to successfully make that change is very, very difficult. So you may have people with incredible upside and be really adaptable, and you certainly should take a chance in those cases. You can also supplement by bringing in someone externally and seeing what you get there. It has to be a motion though, where you're experimenting and pivoting relatively quickly based on what you find, what you start to understand. But when you're early like that, you also should be aligned as a sales leader, as a CEO even, to be aligning with those salespeople, to be out in the field with them, to make sure that you're staying close and not just leaving them on an island.
Mm-hmm. That would make sense. And so to go back to those 4 H's, if you would have to hire someone external, like how do you test that in the recruiting process?
Well, you have to ask different questions. You have to be able to ask certain use cases or experiences that they have, and different questions for each of those H's. Different, it's sort of like a med pick session where you're trying to dig in and see around corners. You're doing the same thing in interviews, really trying to get at the kernel of what's important. As a rule, though, I will say that every subsequent hire should be raising the bar for the entire team. So if this person doesn't have the potential to be as good or meaningfully better than everyone else on the team, why are you hiring them? And that's a high bar. That's a really, really high bar. And it means that you are going to be under-resourced more than over-resourced. But when you have that really high bar for talent, then when you have that talent actually come on board to the organization, they can drive massive impact as opposed to incremental impact.
Hi guys, have you heard anything fascinating yet? If so, please share your learnings on LinkedIn. That way we understand better what you value, but at the same time, you're also providing value to your network. All right, let's get back to the interview. So talk me about the tech stack. I'm also kind of wondering if enterprise sales is so much different compared to, let's say, the more traditional, regular sales motions. Because we covered kind of processes with the enterprise sales playbook. We covered now also a little bit about people. So the last one that's on the list is tools. So would you say that you have like a particular way that you would use particular tech stack in enterprise sales motion, or would you say it's actually quite similar?
I think the tech stack is generally the same. I'm relatively low tech when it comes to the tech stack. I really depend on sales ops to have the right tooling in place that allows us to be efficient and effective. And if we find that there are certain tasks that are taking too long or are too manual when they can be automated, that's when I'll have a conversation with sales ops and figure out ways in which we can adjust what we're utilizing today. But I would say in general, it's more about the fundamentals from a sales standpoint than it is about the tech that's involved. I think the tech can generally stretch from SMB through enterprise.
Okay, but that's good to know. So if people want to build that enterprise sales motion, then just use whatever you have and you can make it work. So if you have to look back at your experience at TripActions, now your experience at Ramp, what would you say you are most proud of? But also, what would you say was the biggest learning?
It's a great question. What I'm most proud of is really figuring out ways to build 0 to 1 and scale 1 to 10 and 10 to 100, where we haven't had all of the answers, but we've been able to build a playbook. We've been able to adapt and innovate and stretch ourselves and continue to close the biggest deal in company history time after time after time, right? We're continuing to move up market. We're continuing to partner with our customers and forge relationships that are lasting. I think that's something that we should all be proud of and something that we strive for. When it comes to hiring, I pride myself on hiring great talent. It doesn't always work out, and I would just say that hiring is really incredibly difficult, and you can hire someone who has the 4 H's, someone who has an incredible track record, great references, both ones they give you and the back channel ones, and it still might not work out. And so I actually think that hiring might be the most challenging thing as a sales leader. It's also the most important thing. It is PG, or pipeline generation, for a sales leader. And so you always need to be focused on talent, attracting, retaining, coaching, all of that when it comes to talent. And so that's an area where I just need to continue to improve, because when you bring in exceptional talent, they can have just, again, such a massive impact on the organization and really push the entire company in the right direction. So it's something that I'm very keen on, and an area where I think probably every sales leader wants to continue to improve.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. Maybe also an interesting topic is, anyone that is in sales. I mean, not everyone, but like most people, eventually they would like to be a sales leader themselves. And so I'm looking at your experience. You started as an AE, then you moved the ladder to enterprise AE, to then eventually being a team leader yourself. And so what was for you like the biggest change that you had to find for yourself in that transformation of an IC to a leader?
I think the biggest change is that I was very successful as an AE, and I would do things myself as an AE. And as a leader, you need to depend on your team, both your direct team and the organization that's supporting your sales. And so you can't do everything. The reason I wanted to become a sales leader was to multiply my impact exponentially in an organization. As a salesperson, even if I had 87 opportunities and I closed them all, if there are 20 people or 20 of me, that's a much bigger impact. And so I'm always looking for ways to multiply my impact, to increase my impact. And the only way to do that as a sales leader is to teach, to coach, to push your team in a variety of ways. And so that's the biggest change, is you have to go from wanting to do everything yourself to not having control over everything, and allowing your team to fail sometimes so that they can succeed down the road. And so you want to make sure that they're failing in the least critical situations, but you have to leave that wiggle room for them to learn and grow. And so, it's my job as a sales leader to make sure that I am helping the team to really maximize the way that they're executing from the potential that they have and reaching their goals. And so that's really what I focus on.
I love that. How did you grow yourself into that position? Because you, as you said yourself, you had to transition from, going and execute to actually, lead, coach the team, leaving room for failure inside the team. But that's not something that happens automatically, or was it? And if not, like how do you come to that realization?
I've been able to learn from great leaders that I've worked with and that I work with today. I think that's critical, right? So absorbing lessons where you can, and pushing yourself, especially in areas where if you reflect on your own performance, how can I be better? It's a question I ask myself every single day. What can I do differently? What can I do better? I ask my team, I ask myself. And then if I know those are the areas where I have blind spots or gaps, what can I do to improve? How can I get better? Is it listening to certain podcasts? Is it reading certain books? What activities? Who does this activity well that I don't do well? And how can I learn from them? If you have that kind of approach, I think you're able to continue to push yourself, even if it's incremental improvements, 1% a day. Those do add up. And I'm by no means perfect, so I'm really looking for those areas every single day that I can improve. I actually know where the areas are. It's more about the execution in those areas. But again, that's my approach.
I love that. It always starts with self-awareness, for sure. Mark, thank you so much for doing this, for coming on the show, for sharing your experience. If people want to find out more about you, want to drop some questions about enterprise sales, or want your expertise, like where would you like to send them?
Yeah, of course. More than happy to do that. I have a lot of people who do reach out, and I advise several company founders as well. You can always feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. And if I can give a shameless plug as well, if you don't like doing expense reports and would love to embrace modern technology, take a look at Ramp. And if you're a salesperson and you have those 4 H's and you're an absolute killer, hit me up as well. We are hiring. In fact, if you're not a salesperson, we're still hiring at Ramp. We're growing really, really fast, and so we're hiring for a lot of different roles.
You're so much in need of salespeople, I can tell. Well, Mark, it was a pleasure again to have you on. Wish you nothing but the best, and see you next time.
Thanks so much, Dylan. Take care.
That's it. We've once again reached the end of an episode. I just really appreciate you all spending the time. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. And until next week with a fresh new episode.